The story begins with a female student named Lee Yoon-seo, who wakes up in the middle of the night. She looks very confused, and on the opposite bed, there is a cell phone vibration that says night has come. But when Yoon-seo checks it, there is blood dripping. On the top mattress, a woman was dead. This makes Yoon-seo panic and leave in fear. Her footsteps take her towards the pool. She saw the figure of a female disciple who threw herself in, then swam over. Yoon-seo panicked even more and decided to leave. But another student with a strange behavior confronts her. Yoon-seo wakes up on the bus and tries to calm down. So, right now Yoon-seo and her classmates are on a bus to travel on an annual retreat. Yoon-seo then heard the excitement of another student in the back seat playing a game called Mafia. But because it's too noisy, the student bullies stop them. Yoon-seo also look up a male student named Kim Junhee who is asleep. Junhee is secretly photographed by a woman named Kim So-mei and shows off to other friends. Yoon-seo's friend So suggests Yoon-seo to sit close to Junhee rather than keep staring at him. Yoon-seo clearly denies staring at Junhee. Yoon-seo's friend focused on her programming code. The classroom teacher gets a call from another teacher, but because the signal is unstable, the classroom teacher can't quite hear the teacher's voice. The other students also brought their belongings and approached the retreat center. Yoon-seo felt like she had been there before, but her friends assumed that all retreat centers were the same. All the students scanned the code from their phones to connect to the Wi-Fi, but Yoon-seo heard that the classroom teacher was having trouble contacting the other teachers. She asked the retreat center staff for help, but their phone lines were also disconnected. In the auditorium, all the students were busy with their own activities. Some are practicing dances, and some are recording everyone else's activities. The classroom teacher then calls Junhee and So-mei as class president and vice president. The classroom teacher says she will leave them for a while because she wants to pick up students from other classes and asks Junhee to keep an eye on the other students. When all the students are gathered, they will take a group photo, so make sure all the students wear their uniforms. The students realize that they have no signal at all, and then the lights suddenly going off. Everyone panics, especially when there is a white cloth figure in the middle. It was another male student who was joking around. The male student also told that there used to be a high school student who ended her life in that place. His joke scared the other students. Yoon-seo and her friend are also finally going to the room, while the other two students now want to collect money from the three bullies. But the three bullies don't accept, making one of the students who wants to collect the cash, named Jin Da-byum, even more afraid. The scene returns to Yoon-seo and her friend. At that time, Yoon-seo is reading a mystery novel, while the friend is still confused, because she cannot access the internet, even though she has a programming class to attend. Suddenly, their phones automatically install an app. Yoon-seo was clearly confused and thought it was her friend prank, but the friend also experienced the same thing. Even Yoon-seo's friend got a message from the game application called Mafia. Yoon-seo and her friend got the role of citizens. Other students also got the same message from the application and received roles in the game. There are those who play the role of citizens, doctors, police, and also the mafia. Only they themselves know their respective roles. All game instructions are very complete and quite detailed. The game will end if either the mafia team or the citizens team wins. There was nothing unusual about the game. The students seemed to enjoy it and started guessing who the mafia was. Yoon-seo was still confused about how the app was installed on her phone, and how to find out all their names complete with photos, especially since there was no internet connection. Yoon-seo and her friend wanted to ask the staff at the place, but there was no one staff around. Junhee also doesn't know when the classroom teacher will return. That's because the classroom teacher can't be contacted. All Junhee knew was that there were only students from their class. They check the other rooms, but Yoon-seo notices a freshly made cup of coffee. The phone then rings, but when picked up, the call is immediately disconnected. They then try to dial another number, but that doesn't work either. Yoon-seo then invited So-mei to go to the pool. Junhee reasoned that all the students would be interviewed, so maybe it was Yoon-seo's turn to be interviewed by So-mei. As Yoon-seo, Her friend and Junhee want to leave. They see Daebyum's friend, who is also a victim of bullying. Junhee finally tries to talk to Daebyum's friend. While at the same time, it turns out that Daebyum himself is apparently still being tortured by 3 bullies. Junhee clearly stops him and is upset with the leader of the bullies, named Go Kyunjun, who has gone too far to make other students hurt. But Kyunjun still doesn't feel guilty. Junhee wants to take Daebyum away, but Daebyum claims to be fine. Kyunjun's men who joined the challenge were then visited by student athletes. Things are getting tense. The student athletes want exercise there, and Kyunjun angrily asks 2 of his men to leave. At the pool, Yoon-seo's friend is detained. Yoon-seo ends up going to the pool alone. In that dark and terrible situation, Yoon-seo is surprised by So-mi and another friend. So-mi apparently gave Yoon-seo a birthday surprise. However, Yoon-seo's friends are even confused as to why So-mi would surprise Yoon-seo. However, Yoon-seo was still grateful. Just as So-mi was about to give the gift, she pushed Yoon-seo into the pool. Yoon-seo's friends clearly panicked, but Yoon-seo claims to be fine and wants to surface, suddenly feeling her legs being dragged by a figure that takes her deeper and deeper. Yoon-seo couldn't reach the surface, and Junhee swiftly came to her rescue. Yoon-seo is immediately taken to the infirmary. At the school medical room, Junhee looks worried, but Yoon-seo asks back about Junhee's condition. That's because Yoon-seo knows that Junhee can't get back into the water, because there was an incident that traumatized Junhee, but Junhee claimed to have forgotten about it. Not long after, Yoon-seo's friend brings So-mi and the others over. Junhee wants So-mi say sorry and apologize to Yoon-seo, because even though they thought it was Yoon-seo's birthday prank, So-mi's actions just now were too much. So-mi, crying, apologized and admitted that she only wanted to celebrate Yoon-seo's birthday. Yoon-seo then forgives and asks So-mi not to cry anymore. After that, they all went out. The other classmates were confused about what to do because their classroom teacher didn't come. Junhee finally suggests they take a break. They will check everything tomorrow at noon. Yoon-seo's friend is upset with Yoon-seo for forgiving So-mi too easily. The friend knows that So-mi is pretending to feel guilty. Suddenly, a female narrator was heard from the speakers telling that the voting time for the Mafia game would end soon. Exactly at 12 o'clock, the name of the friend they accused of being the Mafia was mentioned, and the male student who had been scaring the other students was the Mafia. Thinking it was just an ordinary game, the male student was suddenly in pain. No one believed him at first until his eyes turned white. He then hit his own head so hard that he was injured. Everyone panicked in fear. The man threw himself down and finally ran out the window. Then he died instantly. The narrator of the game then mentioned that the man was a citizen. During the panic, Bell's voice put everyone to sleep. As the day wore on, the students woke up confused. They don't know what happened, and the body of the male student was still there. Their cell phones rang again. The game started again. The narrator mentioned that someone was executed by the Mafia last night, but the dead student was also a Mafia. They were getting panicked. Some students wanted to go to the studio where the narrator's voice was, while others found the student who was executed by the Mafia was Daebyum's friend who was in the toilet. In the studio, there was no one that student could see. They were confused, scared, panicked, and didn't understand what was happening. The game that they thought was entertainment is now horrible. So Junhee suggested that they leave the place, but just as everyone is rushing to leave and has exited the building, their cell phones ring again. The narrator warns the players not to cross the line. Everyone becomes confused. Junhee, who felt unsafe, asked her friends to stay where they were. But there are 2 students who still desperately want to go, and as a result, the 2 students who crossed the line were immediately executed. They both lost consciousness and hit each other's heads until they bled. After one died, the other also beat his own head to death. All the students panicked, but could not do anything. The 2 students who died were residents or citizen role. After that, they discussed again, even with fear. Junhee was confident that their classroom teacher would come soon, but the other students were very uneasy. They couldn't stand to be next to a dead body. Yoon Seo and her friend then go to the rooftop. Meanwhile, Kyung-jun finds a bunch of keys on the staff table and keeps them secretly. Yoon Seo and her friend search for a signal there. Jun-hee then appears, and they realize that from the previous narrator's voice, they should not cross the boundary. Yoon Seo guesses that the boundary is a white line, and as they get closer, the narrator's voice warning will appear again. They wanted to confirm the game's boundaries as they got further away. They hoped that if they found other people later, they could help them. Because they felt that the game area was quite large, they wanted to walk along the game boundary to look for other people's outside help. They then offered anyone who wanted to join them to walk along the boundary line. There were 7 people in total, including Jun-hee, the athlete, and So-mei. After they left, Yoon Seo heard whispering, but her friend claims to have heard nothing. Yoon Seo is getting confused and scared. Meanwhile, Kyung-jun and his 2 men are now taking over the cafeteria. Yoon Seo also wants to move the 2 bodies to the refrigerator because Yoon Seo can't bear to leave their friend's corpse hot and broke. After that, Yoon Seo takes a photo of Daebyum's male body friend in the bathroom as a clue to catch the perpetrator, Aka the Mafia. But then Yoon Seo found the man's cell phone and a hydrant tube with blood. Yoon Seo was convinced that the perpetrator who killed the toilet man had hit him over the head with the tube. And the man didn't seem to put up any resistance. Supposedly, if it was a game, the man wouldn't have died since he was a mafia. Yoon Seo finds it very odd, while Daebyum is confused as to why other mafia kill Mafia 2. Moving on to the team that is walking along the boundary line, even the in-game area turns out to be almost up to the cliff. But while climbing, one of the women slips and sprains her leg. So-mei was a bit upset because she should have been careful. Another friend also suggested going back so that the woman could be treated, but So-mei didn't accept because they had come that far. So-mei was a bit pushy and assured that the woman was fine. The woman also said that she was fine, so they finally continued their journey. Meanwhile, Yoon Seo and the others are now moving the bodies to the freezer. The cell phones of their 2 dead friends can no longer be used either. Daebyum realized further, if their cell phone battery hadn't changed at all from yesterday, it was always 56%, even though it was never charged. After that, Yoon Seo hears the voice again. Yoon Seo confesses that she wants to go to the toilet. There, Yoon Seo checked further about the source of the whispering voice, and it turns out that the voice is directed to a place that is quite gloomy. In that place was an aquarium filled with tree branches. She realized that there was a figure behind her, but it disappeared, and the gloomy place became a bit brighter. Yoon Seo then heard a door creak, and she found another room with many monitors. The phones there weren't working either, but when Yoon Seo left, everything lit up. Yoon Seo then approached her friend, who was still struggling with programming, to see the source code of the game application on their cell phone. But it suddenly crashed. Even their dead friend's phone wouldn't turn on, as if the phone wouldn't work when the owner died. Yoon Seo asks if the friend has been feeling strange since they've been there. Yoon Seo confesses that she saw a ghost in the pool, and the same ghost was also in the basement. Previously, there was a male student who said that there was a ghost in that place. Yoon Seo was sure that it was the ghost that approached her. Her friend clearly didn't believe her. Back to the boundary search team, they finally reached the end and couldn't go any further. But from the camera carried by one of the students, there are 2 people fishing. They immediately shouted for help to that person. But the cameraman realized that the 2 people fishing were not moving at all, and the seagulls around them also seemed to be frozen in midair. While So-mei and the male students explored another path, but there was a faint line. They don't know if it's a barrier or not, but suddenly the man slipped and crossed the line, and he was to be executed. There was one female student who was a witness. She didn't expect the male student to start experiencing strange symptoms. The male disciple then gouged out his own eyes and rolled over until his body stuck in a tree. The boundary search team was increasingly panicked. The students at the retreat center then received an announcement about the dead male student. The man was a citizen. In short order, the retreat team returned back. The other students wanted to know what happened to the dead male student. And So-mi said that the male student didn't realize there was a boundary line, then slipped. With no results or help from the outside, Kyung-jun is upset. Jun-hee says that the place is all covered with lines. They were trapped, unable to leave the place until the game ended. After that, Yoon-seo cries because she proposed forming a boundary search team. If only no one left, then no one would die anymore. The friend didn't want Yoon-seo to blame herself, because they didn't know if there was a way out or not. The friend invites Yoon-seo to find another way out. While Jun-hee is now busy picking up the ringing phone but doesn't hear anything. Yoon-seo and her friend then see Daebyum, who claims to be called Kyung-jun. Yoon-seo suggests not to meet if he doesn't want to, but Daebyum has no choice. Yoon-seo then hears Jun-hee's annoyed voice with a ringing phone. Yoon-seo and her friend are confused. Then Jun-hee explains that all the phones there are fake, none of them are connected. The friend also checks all the document covers, but the documents aren't there at all. The computer can't be turned on either. Meanwhile, at the cafeteria, Daebyum is invited to eat by Kyung-jun and two of his men who are quite intimidating. Kyung-jun still doesn't understand the ongoing mafia game, but Kyung-jun just wants to win the game. He wants to know more. Daebyum explains about the game. Everyone's identity won't be revealed until that person dies. Each of them has to guess. If it's the mafia, it will be against the doctor and the police who side with the citizens. The citizens, doctors, and police would also guess who the mafia was. The team that beats the other team will win. But Kyung-jun is confused by Daebyum's friend who died in the bathroom, even though he was a mafia. For all Daebyum knows, it might be because there's a rule that a mafia has to execute someone, and the mafia has a good reason to kill another mafia rather than a citizen. In a different place, the athlete is now treating the woman's sprained foot. The woman regrets not asking return to the retreat center, knowing that someone would die. But the athlete doesn't want her to blame herself. The athlete is also devastated that her friend died so tragically in front of her eyes. She wanted them to go out together. She wanted to keep him until the end too, so that she could watch him compete later. Then the athlete left. Meanwhile, So-mi and the others began to question the person behind the creation of the game and the reason for involving them in this crazy game. They then discuss again and suspect that maybe what killed the mafia in the bathroom was the work of Kyung-jun and his men who often bully. Moreover, the mafia in the bathroom was the victim of their previous bullying. But there's a student who's not so sure if Kyung-jun was the culprit. The student brought up the first vote. Previously, a woman initiated the vote to the man who previously scared them. The woman who felt accused obviously didn't accept it. People started accusing her of being a mafia and questioned why she asked the others to vote for the nosy man. So-mi also wanted to know why. The cornered woman accuses So-mi of being a mafia. The woman was a witness that while on the mountain, So-mi pushed a male student over the edge. So-mi clearly denied it. So-mi emphasized that she even tried to save the man from falling. A fight almost broke out because So-mi didn't accept being cornered like that. Back to Kyung-jun, he takes Daebyum's cell phone to check whether Daebyum is on the same side as them or not. Daebyum was beaten and couldn't fight back. But the app looks the same as his. Kyung-jun doesn't know if Daebyum is a citizen or not, and in order to make Daebyum's voting the same as his, Kyung-jun takes over his phone. It's just that Kyung-jun can't vote from someone else's phone. Meanwhile, another student now approaches Jun-hee and explains that the students want to vote again. They feel trapped if they don't finish the game soon. Yoon-seo clearly prevents. They can't vote for anyone. Jun-hee wanted to try to talk nicely and gather all the students. But what they know now is that Daebyum is with 3 bullies, where Daebyum still forced Kyung-jun to vote, but to no avail. Jun-hee and the athlete then come to stop Kyung-jun's actions. Jun-hee still tries to break up the fight, but since Kyung-jun remains stubborn, the athlete stops him. Kyung-jun becomes even more defiant. A fight ensues. The 3-on-1 battle was one the athlete could still win. Kyung-jun was beaten until he couldn't breathe and gave up. He would obey the athlete. But just as the athlete wants to leave, Kyung-jun wants to attack him from behind, which Jun-hee stops. Yoon Seo is clearly upset and threatens to tell the other students about what Kyungjun did. Everyone will definitely vote for Kyungjun, so Kyungjun will be executed. Then Kyungjun is reluctantly forced to stop his madness. They then gathered in the auditorium. In less than an hour, the voting closes. Junhee asks his friends not to vote for anyone, hoping that the game will stop if they don't vote. So it was hoped that no more students would die. However, some students were suspicious, fearing that someone might secretly vote without their knowledge. Yoon Seo wanted all the phones to be collected in the middle so they could see who took them. But there are still those who refuse with many excuses. Kyungjun intervenes and agrees with Junhee. He wants everyone to collect their phones. Everyone finally complied and put the phones into the container. The cell phone is placed in the center. And when the voting time was over, the narrator said that the participants had to vote and identify the mafia. Otherwise, they would be disqualified. All of them panicked. Some want to take the cell phone but are prevented from doing so, and some students hurt themselves and act strangely as punishment for breaking the rules. Kyungjun apparently didn't give up his cell phone. In fact, he immediately voted in order to survive. The students rushed to get their cell phones. The student who was late in voting was immediately executed. So other students frantically searched for their cell phones in the limited lighting. Many victims eventually fell, whether from ordinary citizens or mafia. It was because they didn't have time to vote, so they were immediately executed. Kyungjun also manages to find the athlete's cell phone, but he throws it away, and the students who got their respective cell phones immediately voted. So-mei starts voting for the student who accused her earlier, so the other students follow So-mei. Yoon Seo was very confused. She doesn't want to kill the other students, so she invites Junhee to vote for each other. The athlete also couldn't find his cell phone, so that makes his body lose control. He was executed and ended his own life. No one can fight against Kyungjun anymore. And the voting results also stated that the woman who previously conflicted with So-mei would be executed. That woman is an ordinary citizen. She's upset with her friends who don't trust her as a citizen. Night fell, all students fell asleep. The next day, all the students woke up. Things were still chaotic. Some students were crying, but there was one student who didn't wake up. She was dead. And according to the narrator's voice, the female student was killed by the mafia, and the doctor had previously exercised the right to heal someone. But before the voting was closed, and the person healed was a male student. The friend of the dead woman gets upset with Junhee, because they shouldn't have given up the cell phone. Everyone who died last night was because of Junhee, and those who were lucky enough to get the cell phone first, they also blame Kyungjun, but Kyungjun doesn't want to take the blame and puts it on Junhee, who told them to. Junhee can only apologize and leave guiltily. He feels embarrassed and stupid, while Kyungjun is now provoking the others if they have to choose Junhee. That's because Junhee has made a mess. Yoon Seo's friends are confused as to why Kyungjun can be so two-faced. Last night, it was Kyungjun who forced them to hand over the cell phone, but apparently Kyungjun himself took the cell phone himself. Now Kyungjun doesn't feel guilty at all. Kyungjun doesn't want to be cornered, so he bluffs and defends himself. If they only use their common sense to survive, they shouldn't trust Junhee. Yoon Seo then breaks up the fight. They need to figure out a way to get home. Yoon Seo believes that by finding out who the person behind the game is, he can get them home without anyone dying again. But now Yoon Seo suggests moving all the bodies. Kyungjun, who wants to leave, Yoon Seo immediately prevents. The other students also defend Yoon Seo. If Kyungjun doesn't want help, then it's Kyungjun who they will vote for next. Kyungjun, upset, finally agrees to help. They cover all the bodies with white cloths, then move them to the refrigerator. Junhee also came back and helped. Afterward, Junhee regrets his decision, but Yoon Seo is convinced that Junhee doesn't know anything either. Yoon Seo doesn't want Junhee to feel guilty. And if Junhee wants to take responsibility, Yoon Seo asks Junhee to think of a way to get everyone out safely. After that, they leave, but suddenly something falls by itself. Yoon Seo immediately checks it and discovers the dark passageway. A figure appears that makes Yoon Seo surprised. Jun-hee and the others panic as Yoon-seo seems to be suffocating and then becomes unconscious. Then Yoon-seo wakes up in the infirmary with the woman who sprained her leg. Yoon-seo doesn't remember anything before and helps the woman tie the bandage. The woman is sad that the athlete died, even though the athlete had been helping her. Meanwhile, Kyung-jun wants the students who play the role of mafia and police to confess immediately. But since no one wants to confess, it makes them upset. Kyung-jun then accuses Jun-hee of being a mafia for making other people die. That's based on the mafia's job, which is to kill all citizens. But So-mi defends, because previously from the narrator, there were also mafias who died because they didn't vote. Because they don't know who the mafia is and who the police are, they believe that the doctor is the man who was previously rescued, but the man in question denies it. This man has a girlfriend and is often together. His girlfriend also denies being a doctor. The man didn't know why there was a doctor who saved him. The other students then brought up So-mi, who was previously accused of being a mafia by other students for being a witness to pushing the man on the mountain. But So-mi defends herself if she voted for the woman because the woman accused her first. So-mi then accuses the student of being a mafia because she had a fight with her friend who was killed this morning. So-mi find out even more if the student looked good in the front, but bad in the back. So-mi was sure that the student wanted to kill his girlfriend. The student clearly denied it. Then the student cameraman asks why Kyung-jun hid his own cell phone when the others collected theirs. It's as if Kyung-jun knows that ordinary citizens will die if they don't vote. But Kyung-jun blames Junkie because it was Jun-hee's order. The cameraman is confused. Why would Kyung-jun force them if Kyung-jun himself doesn't believe Jun-hee? Kyung-jun, cornered, becomes convinced that the cameraman student is the one who killed the female student this morning. That's because the female student was often secretly recorded by the cameraman, who liked the female student. Even his rejection video was spread on the internet. The cameraman obviously doesn't accept it, but Kyung-jun witnesses that at that time, the cameraman begged for the rejection video to be pulled from the internet. The cameraman defends himself. That's because it has nothing to do with their current game. But Kyung-jun doesn't want to talk much and immediately votes out the cameraman. Kyung-jun's two men also vote for the cameraman. Kyung-jun forces the others to vote for the cameraman too. After that, Kyung-jun and his two men left. Kyung-jun still doesn't accept that the cameraman tried to kill him, but Kyung-jun's men are getting worried because there are only 3 people, while there are 12 others who don't necessarily agree with them. Kyung-jun comes up with a plan. The other students also leave one by one. Jun-hee can't prevent it. Jun-hee is confused about the female student whose friend died this morning, but finally chooses the cameraman because she feels Kyung-jun has a point. 3 other male students, including Daebyum, then confront Kyung-jun and offer him food. Yoon-seo and the student who sprained her leg join in and are confused about what happened. The cameraman explains that he's Kyung-jun's target. He's clearly confused. So-mi also suggests that they talk to the people who haven't voted yet and make sure they don't vote for the cameraman. The 3 male students are now bribed by Kyung-jun to vote for the cameraman. They agree. There are now 7 people voting. There are still 8 others who haven't decided yet. The cameraman gets annoyed. Now it's either him dying or Kyung-jun dying. The cameraman wants his friend to help get the other students to vote for Kyung-jun. If Kyung-jun isn't executed, then the surviving citizens will be Kyung-jun's next victims. Kyung-jun will do everything he can to win. They also agreed to vote for Kyung-jun's 6 people. They're finally voted for Kyung-jun. The remaining 2 people who haven't voted yet are the students who are dating couple. Meanwhile, Yoon-seo tries to enter the hallway in the refrigerator. Yoon-seo entered alone to make sure what was there. However, on the way, Yoon-seo fell. She entered the basement area. Her friends outside heard the sound of falling and panicked, but Yoon-seo is still fine and is getting more and more confused about the situation in that place. Yoon-seo then tries to explore the place further and finds a room with a CCTV monitor on, while her friend outside is worried because Yoon-seo doesn't respond at all. Yoon-seo's friend decided to go inside to make sure. Yoon-seo also felt a figure passing by. Yoon Seo immediately tried to follow the figure until she found another place, an endless corridor that made Yoon Seo confused. She felt like she was trapped in a maze. At the same time, Kyung-jun is also quite confused because there are 6 people voting for him. Kyung-jun's plan now is to prove that the cameraman is the mafia. Then they decide to leave. Meanwhile, So-mi and the others make sure a couple of students who haven't voted yet to vote for Kyung-jun, but the woman prevents them by saying she doesn't want to be forced by anyone. She wants them to think first. The current situation makes her very uneasy. She sends everyone out of the room. Jun-hee chases after the cameraman, who is desperate because people don't believe him. Jun-hee tries to convince his 2 friends again and asks the cameraman to go to his room. Back to Yoon Seo. In her confusion, a room door opens. Yoon Seo rushes into it, but it's immediately locked. The phone rings, but when picked up, there's no answer and no sound. Yoon Seo checks the room further and finds a box of photo albums. One of the photos turns out to be from her class, but with blurred faces, except for a female student. Meanwhile, his friend also searched for Yoon Seo's location, but found nothing. Instead, it stopped because of a dead end. The friend was very confused. Yoon Seo was also startled by a falling object. Yoon Seo decides to take a photo of her class, and then realizes that the wall there is connected to the hallway. Kyung-jun also meets the woman who also chose the cameraman, and since they're on the same side, Kyung-jun invites her to work together. So-mi and Jun-hee are also still convincing the pair to vote for Kyung-jun, but the woman still insists that she doesn't want to be provoked. According to her, she doesn't have to trust anyone, and she feels like So-mi is a mafia too, because So-mi is pushing them so hard. So-mi gets upset and tries to calm Jun-hee down. They leave, but when they go to the cameraman's room, no one is there. Now the cameraman is brought in by the female student who's working with Kyung-jun. The female student says that she wants to bring the cameraman together with a student who hasn't voted yet, so that the cameraman can convince her. But upon entering the room, the cameraman is beaten by Kyung-jun. The door is closed. The female student is very confused. Then she left, where the cameraman was thoroughly beaten by Kyung-jun and his 2 men. Meanwhile, the female student who cooperated with Kyung-jun tried to prevent a pair of students from voting first. On the other hand, Yoon Seo's friend comes back and doesn't find Yoon Seo. She wants to find a way out. Yoon Seo then appears. Yoon Seo immediately explained what happened, that she fell into the basement and found a room with a surveillance camera. Then enter the endless hallway and find a photo in one of the rooms. Yoon Seo doesn't know who the photo is yet, but it might be their seniors who used to retreat at that place too. Yoon Seo also couldn't explain the faces in each photo, except for one female student. Yoon Seo is sure that the woman is the ghost she saw. It's not long before Jun-hee arrives to ask about the cameraman's position, thinking he's disappeared. They're going to look for him. Kyung-jun also gets bolder and sticks a sharp object into the cameraman's thigh. He forces him to confess to being a mafia. When Kyung-jun wants to gouge out his eyes, the cameraman, who's in pain and can't fight back, finally complies. Jun-hee and So-mi can't find the cameraman, but a voice from the studio can be heard saying that the cameraman confessed that he's a mafia. Yoon Seo, Jun-hee, and So-mi rush to the studio room. The cameraman confesses that he killed the woman he liked because she rejected him. The cameraman is upset with Kyung-jun. Is Kyung-jun satisfied now? Jun-hee arrives, but the door is locked and the cameraman is silenced. Yoon Seo brings an axe to open the door, and when the door opens, they immediately rescue the cameraman. Kyung-jun is still adamant and convinced that the cameraman is the mafia, and the voting results also voiced if the cameraman got the most votes and would be executed. The cameraman is very upset. He doesn't want to die just like that. Kyung-jun should die too. The cameraman immediately grabs the axe that Jun-hee is carrying and wants to beat Kyung-jun, but Kyung-jun dodges and the voting time is over. The cameraman no longer has the axe in his hand. He then slammed it into his own head. The narrator also mentions that the cameraman is a mafia. So, while the citizens were asleep, the cameraman killed the woman he liked. It was because she underestimated and rejected him. The students immediately went into hiding before nightfall and were preyed upon by the mafia. Many people didn't think Kyungjun was right. The next day, everyone woke up and still couldn't believe what happened last night. The narrator then said that the police had used their skills, then the mafia had also killed a female student who had a boyfriend. The female student was a citizen. The students then see a male student crying over his dead girlfriend. Then all the students are called by Kyungjun, who confirms that his words are true if the cameraman is a mafia. And if they want to catch another mafia, then everyone must obey Kyungjun's orders from now on. Kyungjun will then decide who they'll vote for next. Junhee obviously protests. He's confused, they should decide who to suspect together. Kyungjun then feels that the person who tried to vote him out last night is the mafia. Somi clearly doesn't accept it, because the dead woman was her friend. If she was accused of being a mafia, she wouldn't have killed her own friend. But according to Kyungjun, friends are meaningless in this game of death. No matter how close friends are, they can kill each other. The other students are also a bit annoyed with the role of the doctor and the police who don't seem to contribute anything. Their guess is that the doctor is the victim's boyfriend. This was because previously the male student had received protection from the doctor. There is a strong belief that he used the protection on himself. But it could also be that the man is a mafia. That's because there were only 2 of them on the 3rd floor. The man heard the other students talking and was very uneasy. Kyungjun is also upset that the discussion is unsuccessful. He then points to Junkie as the mafia, because he tried so hard to save the cameraman. So they have to vote for Junhee. Next, Somi clearly defended. They didn't know that the cameraman was a mafia. Everyone who defends the cameraman is also a victim. Yoon-seo also won't go along with Kyungjun if Kyungjun doesn't have enough evidence. Yoon-seo won't vote just because Kyungjun hates that person. Yoon-seo also remembers about the CCTV room and says that everything is recorded on the CCTV. Yoon-seo takes the students to check the CCTV room, but when they check, the recording files aren't there at all, as if someone had deleted them. Yoon-seo is accused of being a fraud. Kyungjun is even more convinced that Yoon-seo is the mafia. The other students are also confused as to how Yoon-seo knew there was a CCTV camera there. They are convinced that Yoon-seo is the one who deleted the CCTV footage. Junhee clearly defends, why would Yoon-seo delete the files and bring them to that place? Kyungjun doesn't want to argue anymore and immediately votes for Yoon-seo, followed by the boys and the others. Each one of them wants to leave, but Yoon-seo holds back and will prove that she's not a mafia. Yoon-seo's friends will try to recover the deleted files. So, they'll vote tonight. After the CCTV footage is recovered, they left. Yoon-seo is getting sadder, while Somai also has a hunch that Yoon-seo is the mafia. Somai wants to vote now, but the friend who sprained her light assumes that Yoon-seo is an ordinary citizen. If they vote for Yoon-seo, it means they've killed Yoon-seo. But Somin doesn't care. That of course makes the friend confused. Does Somai continue to follow Kyungjun? What if Kyungjun later accuses her of being a mafia too? Will Somai still follow Kyungjun? They don't know who's a mafia and who's an ordinary citizen. And the friend thinks Somai just hates Yoon-seo. That's her reason for voting for Yoon-seo. But Somai accused her friend of being a mafia. The friend couldn't believe that she was being accused. The other friend calmed them down because the dislocated friend was still not okay after the athlete died. The injured friend left, while Yoon-seo's friend was still trying to recover CCTV data. She also borrowed Debium's laptop. Yoon-seo also remembers something and checks it out. Junhee comes along and Yoon-seo finds it odd that she found the photo in a room. Yoon-seo isn't lying or hallucinating at all, and Junhee believes her now. They enter the hallway and reconfirm the place Yoon-seo visited earlier, but there's nothing along the hallway. Even at the end, there's a wall, it's a dead end, and the floor is hard, so it's impossible to break in. Yoon-seo becomes even more confused. That night, Yoon-seo and Junhee are at the rooftop. Yoon-seo tells Junhee about her weirdness since coming to the place. She always dreams about death. Junhee says he won't let Yoon-seo die, so they have to go home safely. Junhee asks about other evidence, and Yoon Seo remembers something. Yoon Seo shows them a lamp that can detect blood spots. They head straight to the murdered student's room. The door was locked, so the mafia broke it with an axe, which the cameraman had used earlier. The blood there was definitely the cameraman's and the mafia's, but Yoon Seo was also splattered with blood at that time. So they can't be sure of the culprit just by the lamp. Then Yoon Seo's friend sent a message if she could recover the third-floor surveillance camera footage. After getting the news, they rushed over. After that, the recording is played and can be checked who is the person who entered the dead student's room. But it turned out that the recording suddenly crashed. The computer exploded by itself. Everyone panicked, and the computer could no longer be turned on. Kyung-jun still alleges that it was Yoon Seo, until another footage appears, which leads to the pool. There's a woman there, and they're convinced it's a ghost. Yoon Seo showed the class photo she found. Yoon Seo felt that there was something other than them in that place, and Yoon Seo thinks the ghost language is what made this mafia game. Kyung-jun still doesn't believe her, and continues to suspect that Yoon Seo fabricated the video. But Yoon Seo's friend defends her, because the show on the computer is a live show. Yoon Seo asks Kyung-jun and the others to realize that by killing the innocent, then all will not be able to live in peace, even though they eventually survive. Yoon Seo suggests finding out who the ghost is and what it has to do with this mafia game. Yoon Seo takes them to the pool together, but they find nothing. Kyung-jun protests because the voting time will end soon. Junhee finally proposes to make the voting results even. There are currently 4 people voting for Yoon Seo. There should be 4 more people voting for someone else. Junhee volunteered to be the one to vote. And finally, the biggest vote between Yoon Seo and Junhee is begin. After the voting, the narrator said that there would be a second vote for the 2 people with the same votes. So other students must choose between Yoon Seo and Junhee. If they break the rules, they will be executed. Things were getting frantic. They're confused about who to choose. So-mi immediately chooses Yoon Seo and tears up the photo that Yoon Seo is holding. So-mi is convinced that Yoon Seo is the real mafia and links her to ghosts. So-mi forces the others to vote for Yoon Seo too, but Yoon Seo's friends defend her. Junhee remembers the incident that made her live with guilt. Junhee speaks up and claims to be a mafia. Junhee wants everyone to vote for him. Junhee apologizes for lying all this time. She just wanted to survive. Yoon Seo clearly denies it. She knows Junhee isn't the mafia, but Kyung-jun immediately votes for Junhee, followed by other students. That makes So-mi upset. The voting time is over. Junhee will be executed. Junhee loses consciousness and then throws himself in the pool. That night when everyone was asleep, So-mi brought an axe. So-mi was the mafia all along. She also killed previous male student's girlfriend. Now she wants to kill Yoon Seo. So-mi was the mafia on the first day. So-mi and the other mafia wake up. They then discuss with D-Beam's friend, who is also a mafia, the permission to go to the toilet. At first, the mafia didn't want to kill anyone. They will leave tomorrow if the classroom teacher comes with the other students. But a message came up that the mafia had to follow the rules. If not, then one of the mafia would be executed, and the mafia's time was up. So one of the mafia was executed. They hear the sound of D-Beam's friend, who is now slamming himself. The other mafia try to prevent it, but D-Beam's friend is out of control and ends up dying himself. Now that Junhee is claiming to be a mafia when he's not, So-mi, who likes Junhee, is obviously very upset and wants to kill Yoon Seo, but the narrator's voice stops her. That's because in order to kill someone, the mafia must discuss with the other mafia who their next target is. Another day passed. Yoon Seo is still alive. She goes straight to the pool and checks on Junhee, who's floating. Yoon Seo immediately brings him to the shore and feels very guilty. Yoon Seo is sad. She should have told Junhee first if she liked him. But now it's too late. But then the narrator mentions that the doctor cured Junhee, so Junhee, who was dead, is now retrieved again. Yoon Seo is the first person Junhee sees. Yoon Seo is relieved and cries tears of joy. Meanwhile, one of Kyung-jun's men is washing his bloody clothes. Another man catches him, frightening him. The narrator also says that Kyung-jun's men were executed by the mafia last night. Kyung-jun's friend is cornered and can't explain. His strange behavior also makes other students suspect. So-mei also finally appears and immediately hugs Jun-hee. So-mei is still upset with Yoon-seo, but Jun-hee asks about the photo that So-mei tore up earlier. But now it's gone. So-mei gets even more upset that Jun-hee believes Yoon-seo's words, even though Jun-hee died because of Yoon-seo. The sound of shouting interrupts their argument. The other students find Kyung-jun's dead body. They immediately accuse Kyung-jun's other men of being his mafias, but he denies it. Yoon-seo immediately photographed the body and the surrounding evidence. Yoon-seo feels strange about the body, which seems to have been stabbed multiple times with a knife. Even after death, the mafia didn't go that far before. But now, the mafia seems to want Kyung-jun's men dead. The accused henchman clearly denies it and explains everything to Kyung-jun. He hopes Kyung-jun will help him, because there's no way he'd kill his own friend. People will definitely believe Kyung-jun's words, and Kyung-jun agrees. On the wall, the police suddenly write that Jun-hee is a citizen. The other students are confused whether to believe it or not, and what's more, they don't know who wrote it. After that, they gather together. Jun-hee confesses that he lied before. He wasn't a mafia and was just an ordinary citizen. Jun-hee also didn't know who the doctor was who saved him, but Jun-hee was still grateful. But Kyung-jun and the other students still don't believe it, because during Jun-hee's death last night, the narrator didn't mention whether Jun-hee was a mafia or not. Usually, the identity is revealed when one of the participants dies. They wonder if the writing on the wall is Jun-hee's own, but Jun-hee denies it. Kyung-jun's men continue to corner Jun-hee and are convinced that Jun-hee is the mafia. The other students defend him, and So-mei turns the tables on Kyung-jun's men. The person most suspected of his friend's death is himself, since they both slept together last night. He still denies it. His friend was already dead when he woke up. The mafia also seems to have smeared blood on his clothes. He then asks Kyung-jun for help to defend him, but Kyung-jun makes him feel even worse. That's because the strongest evidence at the moment is that the men killed him themselves. Kyung-jun then invites the others to vote for his own men, making the men upset and want to beat him up. But he loses. Yoon-seo stops him. Jun-hee is also annoyed with Kyung-jun, who always does whatever he wants. If Kyung-jun continues to get away with it, then other students must be really hoping that Kyung-jun will be the next to die. Jun-hee wants to get everyone together. At 11 p.m. tonight, don't vote. Until then, Kyung-jun is angrily forced to comply. After that, Jun-hee wants to talk to So-mei. Kyung-jun's men also confirmed that he wasn't the culprit. He will find out who killed his friend. Meanwhile, Dabeom questions the police writing why only Jun-hee was notified as a citizen when previously the police had used their expertise. Also, there might be another writing somewhere. Meanwhile, Jun-hee doesn't like So-mei framing Yoon-seo, but So-mei argues that she only wants to save Jun-hee. Jun-hee rejects it. He never asked So-mei for any helps. Jun-hee then leaves. So-mei clearly doesn't accept it. So-mei points out that she's always been on Jun-hee's side. Jun-hee should be grateful, or she wants to be considered a mafia. But Jun-hee doesn't care at all. After that, Jun-hee takes the camera and shows the footage of them on the cliff, as if the one outside the boundary didn't move at all. And when Yoon-seo checks further, all the stored photos of the students have blurry faces, exactly the same as the photos she saw before. Meanwhile, Kyung-jun's men start investigating alone. He feels strange about his friend's death, and remembers that last night Kyung-jun rejected them together. So two of his men are also in the opposite room. The men suspect Kyung-jun as the killer, since only Kyung-jun knew they were hiding in that place. Kyung-jun also now takes the key and leaves. Meanwhile, Yoon-seo struggles with the handycam and takes pictures of the surroundings. But there are no problems. But suddenly a figure startled her. There's no one in sight. And Yoon-seo actually found a key, who knows what for. A message on her cell phone comes in, telling her that Yoon-seo has been assigned to find the game master. The message then disappears. Kyung-jun's men then catch Kyung-jun leaving. He follows him silently and sees Kyung-jun carrying something from the hydrant box. He checks further in the box. There's Jun-hee's axe and something else. Then he finds Yoon-seo. The camera again doesn't work properly when it picks up Yoon-seo's face. Feeling odd, Yoon-seo also claims to have seen a ghost and found a key. Then gets Yoon-seo's message, sure there is something important. The friends don't know what the message is because they don't get it. Yoon-seo was getting confused, but she couldn't show the message about finding the game master. Since the message disappeared immediately, Yoon-seo wanted to discuss it with the other students as well. But the friend wasn't convinced because everyone didn't trust Yoon-seo right now. Even earlier when they went to the pool on Yoon-seo's advice, they didn't find anyone. Yoon-seo will be even more suspected. Dae-beom and Jun-hee agree with Yoon-seo's friend. They should be careful until they find solid evidence. Jun-hee wants the conversation to be a secret between them. Meanwhile, the male student outside is looking at the picture of his dead girlfriend. He's still sad until he sees Kyung-jun's departure followed by his men carrying axes. The male student is obviously curious and follows quietly into the warehouse. Kyung-jun's men then beat Kyung-jun first for being caught following him. The subordinate immediately asks why Kyung-jun hid the axe and now wants to burn the blood-stained clothes. He's sure Kyung-jun is trying to get rid of the evidence of being a mafia. But Kyung-jun admits that he was framed too. They fight. The male student, he saw and heard everything. But the fight comes to a halt when the male disciple is caught. Not having time to leave, Kyung-jun and his men beat him up. The male student tried to call out to his friends, but was immediately silenced, and because he rebelled, he fell and hit his head. He was in pain and could no longer escape. Kyung-jun and his men take the opportunity to kill him. That's because if everyone finds out, they'll be accused of being mafia. Kyung-jun and his men leave. The man on the verge of dying is actually a doctor. He used his abilities when he panicked and saw another student cross the line and get executed. But his girlfriend died afterward, and he couldn't use his doctor ability because he had to wait 48 hours after the first healing ability was performed and used. And when Yoon-seo and Jun-hee talk on the rooftop, the man hears that he won't let Yoon-seo die. So later, when Jun-hee confesses to being a mafia to save Yoon-seo, the man becomes compassionate and uses his doctor's ability to help Jun-hee. Now the man is dead. Meanwhile, Yoon-seo and Jun-hee search for the photo album that Yoon-seo found earlier, but it's not there. The narrator then mentions that the male student who played the doctor died. The students then go to the warehouse. They don't understand how the man died, because it seems like he didn't cross the line. Yoon-seo sees evidence that someone seems to have killed the man. That's because there are many signs of resistance. Afterward, they removed the man's body. Yoon-seo and her friend investigate the place further. The friend was sure that the culprit was the mafia, but Yoon-seo finds it odd that the man was killed during the day. They then found shoe prints and pieces of palm. There is also a brick, which is believed to have been used to hit. Meanwhile, another student sees a writing that tells them that Jun-hee and Dae-beom are mafia. The writer claimed to be a policeman. The other students are confused. Dae-beom clearly denies the accusation. Jun-hee also denies that he's a mafia. Kyung-jun's men keep trying to corner Jun-hee, but Yoon-seo is convinced that the writing is fake. That's because the writing appeared after the male student died. It's as if the killer wanted to frame Jun-hee and Dae-beom. Kyung-jun then takes the writing and tears it up. Kyung-jun wants to know who the real cops are, but no one will confess. And so Yoon-seo says that she knows who killed the male student. They then go to the location where Kyung-jun's men died. The other friends are confused as to why they were brought there. Yoon-seo also shows footprints at the location of the man's death in the warehouse, and there is a cut palm next to it. Strong belief that the evidence was left by the killer. And a connection, in that room there are the same footprints as the cut palm. Jun-hee is convinced that the soles are usually found on basketball shoes, and only Kyung-jun and his men used them back then. The other students were immediately suspicious, but they denied it. Kyung-jun wasn't afraid to have his shoes examined either, and when he wants to see his men's shoes, he rebels and finds out that the soles belong to Kyung-jun's men. Yoon-seo also found bite marks on his hand. He still denies murder, but Yoon-seo has evidence of the weapon used in the warehouse. He blames Kyung-jun because Kyung-jun was the one who killed the male student in the warehouse. Kyung-jun clearly denies it because the shoes and bricks show he was the culprit, but Yoon-seo doesn't mention the bricks at all. Yoon-seo also says that there are other shoe prints in the warehouse. Yoon-seo is sure that those are Kyung-jun's tracks. Everyone turns on Kyung-jun and his men even more. Kyung-jun beats up his men and tries to stop the other students. Junhee gets upset and teaches Kyung-jun until things are finally much calmer. Kyung-jun notices that a highlighter has fallen off. Kyung-jun accuses him of making the writing on the wall, which accused Junhee and Debium of being mafia. He still denies it, but the other student no longer believes him. He begs not to be voted as the mafia. Kyung-jun insists that Junhee stop the voting. They have to wait until 11:00 p.m. tonight. After that, Junhee makes a decision to keep Kyung-jun and his men in the room and not allowed to leave. They also want the key Kyung-jun is holding to be handed over immediately. But Kyung-jun claims he lost the key. Debium wants Kyung-jun's cell phone handed over, that way they can trust Kyung-jun. Kyung-jun will get his cell phone back at 11:00 p.m. tonight when he wants to vote. The subordinate's cell phone was also taken. Kyung-jun and his men then enter separate rooms. After that, So-mi and the female student come to Debium in the restroom. They want to be in the cafeteria as a safe place, because no axe can penetrate the cafeteria door. Meanwhile, the cafeteria key is still with Kyung-jun. They have to get it. Debium complies. Yoon-seo is also now treating Junhee. And when she's want to leave, Yoon-seo realizes there's a liquid medicine that seems to have been used by the police before to write. That night, the students discuss who they'll vote for as the mafia. But both Kyung-jun and his men are suspicious. But according to Yoon-seo, Kyung-jun and his men are ordinary citizens. And So-mi says that the police should get involved and tell them who the real mafia is, so that ordinary citizens can be saved. But Yoon-seo believes that the police's position is very dangerous now, especially since the doctor is dead. In short order, 11 p.m. arrived. The discussion was successful. Junhee would deliver the cell phone to Kyung-jun and his men. Meanwhile, the other students could go into hiding. Debium would then help Junhee deliver the cell phone to Kyung-jun. After that, the other students went into hiding, while Kyung-jun's men were visited by Junhee. His cell phone is returned. He immediately chooses Kyung-jun, but he immediately fainted because after that everyone voted for him. He's still begging. He asks to be saved and doesn't want to die, because he's not a mafia. But Junhee says that the student doctor also wanted to live, but was killed instead. Junhee leaves. The subordinate then cries. Meanwhile, Debium confronts Kyung-jun, so previously Kyung-jun was the one who put the writing on the wall if Junhee and Debium are mafia. So-mi and the female students arrive, wanting to ask for the cafeteria key first, then they'll hand over Kyung-jun's cell phone. If Kyung-jun doesn't vote, then Kyung-jun will die. Kyung-jun is quite upset with Debium, who now dares to fight and threaten him, even though Debium has been the victim of his bullying. But Kyung-jun is finally now choiced to comply, because he doesn't want to die. They also could find the key to the cafeteria. Debium then takes Kyung-jun to get his cell phone, but Kyung-jun still tells Debium to take it, and Debium is now getting bolder. He refuses Kyung-jun's orders. Since there isn't much time for voting, Kyung-jun votes by himself, and then Debium locks him out. Kyung-jun rebels and promises to kill Debium on the way out, but Kyung-jun couldn't open the door until the voting is over. Kyung-jun's men begin to start to act symptoms of death. The narrator then mentions that the men are citizens. Kyung-jun didn't even think so before Kyung-jun was also framed by the real mafia. So Kyung-jun tried to get rid of the evidence so as not to be suspected. Kyung-jun intends to kill the mafia tomorrow, but it wasn't long before Debium came in very defiantly. Dae-byum believes Kyung-jun is very upset about being fooled by a loser. It looks like Dae-byum is laughing his ass off, which makes Kyung-jun go straight for the kill. But Dae-byum tries to survive, and just as he's want to be killed, night falls. Kyung-jun then asleep, not Dae-byum, because Dae-byum is the mafia. Now Dae-byum will get his revenge. Dae-byum and his friend had been the victims of Kyung-jun's bullying. Until that night, Dae-byum got the role of the mafia. Dae-byum also tragically kills Kyung-jun's men first, then tried to frame Kyung-jun and the other men. And now Dae-byum starts killing Kyung-jun by stabbing him repeatedly, without Kyung-jun being able to fight back. The next day, after everyone wakes up, the narrator mentions that Kyung-jun was a citizen and executed by the mafia. The tragic death of Kyung-jun and his men makes the other students feel that the mafia is too cruel. Yoon-seo also suggests moving his body first, but So-mi refuses and leaves. She even ignores Junkie. Dae-byum and the other two male students discuss who the real mafia is. Dae-byum starts accusing Yoon-seo of being the mafia, because Yoon-seo has been too weird, like telling them to move the body and such like fat. On the other hand, So-mi and her two friends are also discussing. So-mi also suspects Yoon-seo as a mafia, because Yoon-seo said about surveillance cameras, ghosts, and seemed to be distracting them from the game. Kyung-jun had also previously said that Yoon-seo was a mafia. Usually Kyung-jun has a point, but So-mi's friend herself sees that Yoon-seo is not the type of person who likes to lie, so she thinks Yoon-seo is not a mafia. The other friend is still confused and then invites So-mi to talk to both, while Yoon-seo, her friend, and Junhee are now somewhere else. There are now 9 people left. They need to identify the mafia as soon as possible, or someone will die again tomorrow. Yoon-seo is convinced that the key he found is the way out to find the game master and end it all. So after that they search for more clues. Back to So-mi. Her friend thinks Dae-byum is the mafia, because last night only the 3 of them knew where to lock up Kyung-jun to get his cell phone. And only Dae-byum also has a grudge against Kyung-jun, but So-mi tries to defend Dae-byum. Then 2 male students show up and are confused about what So-mi and her friend are doing in that place. They're also confused about why So-mi is holding Kyung-jun's key. They feel awkward, but suspected that So-mi and her friend wanted to take control of the cafeteria alone. So-mi argues that she's just hungry and found Kyung-jun's key. Meanwhile, Junhee goes to another room and finds Kyung-jun's cell phone, whereas before Dae-byum took Kyung-jun's cell phone. Yoon-seo also now finds a box in the closet, and when she opens it with the key, there is a photo with a clearer image. The picture is their class photo. Yoon-seo gets a message, which is Si-yeon's name as the game master. Everyone else got the same message, and suddenly remembered a figure named Si-yeon, their deceased classmate, who ended her life long before the game started. After that, they had a discussion. They were confused about how Si-yeon became the game master, even though she was dead. They also found it strange that, thanks to Yoon-seo finding the name of the game master, their memories of Si-yeon suddenly returned. They suspected that the ghost Yoon-seo had seen in the past was Si-yeon. But So-mi doesn't want to talk about it and instead accuses Yoon-seo, who seems to know quite a lot, but doesn't tell her anything. And when Se-yeon was alive, Yoon-seo was the closest person to Se-yeon. Everyone else there wasn't close to Se-yeon at all. Some never even spoke to her. But Yoon-seo's friends were sure that Se-yeon didn't end her life. Rumor has it that someone killed her. So-mi keeps trying to change the subject, as it's the mafia game they should be more worried about. But Yoon-seo remains curious and suspects that Se-yeon is now trying to say something from the game. If Se-yeon didn't end her life and is now involving them in the game, it's possible that one of them is the killer, and it could be that the one who became the mafia was the one who killed Se-yeon. Then So-mi's friend invites So-mi to talk to them alone. The friend is convinced that Si-yeon actually died because of them, but So-mi denies it. The friend panics and wants to tell everyone what happened, leaving So-mi confused. That's because they didn't commit any crimes for the problem with Si-yeon back then. It was just a joke and not a big deal. So-mi insists that they're innocent and shouldn't apologize either. So-mi asks the friend to shut up, or people will vote them out. The friend was silent and did not expect So-mi's words. After that, So-mi talked to Dae-byum. So-mi was afraid that her own friend would spread what really happened to Se-yeon. Dae-byum is clearly confused and asks back, why did So-mi bully her in the first place? So-mi must take responsibility for her own actions. Although Dae-byum had also been involved in threatening, but the people who knew about it, besides So-mi, Dae-byum had killed them all. Dae-byum then says that if So-mi's friends talk about Se-yeon, the mafia won't be able to protect So-mi anymore. Dae-byum leaves. So-mi gets even more upset. Meanwhile, Jun-hee shows Kyung-jun's cell phone, which should be held by Dae-byum. And it also seems that Dae-byum was locked up in that place, and there was a rebellion from within. Yoon-seo becomes confused. Kyung-jun and his men suspect each other of killing other men. In the end, Kyung-jun and his men also die, as if the mafia planned to kill the three of them from the beginning. Back to So-mi, she comes to the cafeteria upset. Her friends are still talking about Se-yeon's ghost. That makes So-mi even more emotional. But after that, So-mi suspects Dae-byum as the mafia, because the death of Kyung-jun and two of his men was Dae-byum's revenge as a victim of bullying. Dae-byum also talked to Se-yeon in the past, making the other student think that Dae-byum likes Se-yeon. It's just that So-mi won't vote for Dae-byum. So-mi had another candidate who she thought was more suspicious. Later that night, the students accuse each other. Yoon-seo and Jun-hee start asking Dae-byum where he went last night, so Kyung-jun's cell phone can be left in another room. Dae-byum has trouble answering, but admits that he didn't meet Kyung-jun alone because he was with So-mi and her friend. The other two men suspect So-mi and her friend of being mafia, since they were caught taking Kyung-jun's keys. So-mi then defends herself because she saw Kyung-jun hiding the key in the hydrant, so they took it. The other students discuss Se-yeon because during their lives, So-mi and her friend were the ones who didn't get along with Se-yeon. They became suspicious that So-mi and her friend were mafia. So-mi, who felt cornered, then said that she knew who started the video rumor about Se-yeon. So-mi then votes for her dislocated friend, followed by another friend. The accused friend was obviously very surprised and didn't accept it. It was So-mi and her friend who made the video. So-mi hates Se-yeon because of Jun-hee. So-mi was the source of the problem all along. The friend doesn't accept being framed. And because So-mi remains stubborn, the friend feels suspicious of So-mi and asks So-mi to take responsibility for her words. The friend will check who So-mi really is. So-mi doesn't care at first, but after finding out that she's a cop, she's even more uneasy. The friend also showed So-mi as a mafia, and showed it to other students. Everyone is increasingly distrustful of the friend, who was on So-mi's side too, so he feels guilty and apologizes because she's also a victim. Dae-byum also starts accusing So-mi of killing everyone. The other students join him in his accusation, until So-mi can't deny it anymore. She wasn't the one who killed Kyung-jun, but So-mi killed the male student's girlfriend because So-mi had no choice, or she would die. So-mi didn't want to be a mafia either, and what happened to Se-yeon has nothing to do with her. Yoon-seo is upset that So-mi is using Se-yeon for herself. So-mi gets more and more angry with Yoon-seo, but Yoon-seo believes that no one trusts So-mi anymore. Even Jun-hee isn't on So-mi's side. Jun-hee wants So-mi to take responsibility like she said before. Jun-hee then votes for So-mi, followed by the other students. So-mi rebelled. Dae-byum stops her. That made So-mi laugh. Everyone's been fooled because there's another mafia. But when she tries to say the name of the mafia, So-mi chokes and blood comes out of her mouth. The narrator said that the mafia should not mention the identity of other mafia to the citizens. Everyone ends up voting for So-mi. They then leave, leaving So-mi upset that no one is on her side. So-mi then approaches the statue and reminds it of Se-yeon. The voting ended. So-mi was finally executed. So-mi's friend is a police officer. Previously, she used her police skills to check the role of the athlete, who was to be an ordinary citizen. After the athlete's death, the cop was very sad. She then suspected Junkie, but Junhee wants to be an ordinary citizen too. It's just that then Junhee claims to be a mafia, so that people will vote for him to save Yoon-seo. To that end, the cop puts a sign on the wall that Junhee is a citizen. Now, before bedtime, Junhee meets the police. After that, it's bedtime. WM approaches Somi's body and talks to the other mafia. There are only 2 of them left now, so they have to take care of the police first. The next day, the narrator says that the cop was executed by the mafia last night. Junhee is also very upset. The other students panic because now that there's no police, it'll be harder for them to find the mafia. Meanwhile, Junhee remembers something. She saw Seyeon jump off the bridge, but Junhee was too late to save her. Now Somi's friend is the dead cop, while the others are also now trying to cover Somi's body. Junhee also now approaches Yoon-seo and her friend. Junhee tells them that she previously met with the police and planned something. The cop only believes Junhee, so for that she asks Junhee for help. The cop is sure to be the next target of the mafia. That's why she wants Junhee to find out who the real mafia is. They have to prepare something. The cop is also upset that she didn't take advantage of her opportunity as a cop to find out more and save others. Then the cop is taken to the toilet and hides in the ceiling. Junhee leaves the air freshener. Now Junhee brings in all the remaining students. Junhee points out that before the cop's death, he had mixed the air freshener with neon paint, so there would be paint on the shoes of the person who killed the cop. As proof that the cop believed Junhee showed his footage of him with the cop. After that, Junhee started checking all the shoes, but the neon paint wasn't on DBM's shoes. Instead, it's on Somi's friend's shoes. The friend clearly denies being a mafia. She didn't kill anyone, and she's just an ordinary citizen. She doesn't know how the neon paint got on her shoes, but Junhee still wants proof. Unable to show proof, the woman obviously protested, claiming to be an ordinary citizen, and the other student who protested was pushed away. And as for the previous suspicion, because this friend was being used by Somi. Yoon-seo also helped confirm, and there wasn't any paint on the soles of the shoes. The paint should have been on the soles of the shoes too, but it wasn't there at all. Yoon-seo isn't sure if Somi's friend is the culprit. Yoon-seo's friend also wants them to keep voting tonight. Junhee doesn't speak anymore and decides to leave. Yoon-seo and her friend then check the bathroom again, and she finds it odd that everyone's shoes are clean, while Somi's friend's shoes only have a little paint on them when there should be a lot of paint on them. The real mafia must have entered without shoes. Yoon-seo's friend immediately checked the police hideout, and she found irregularities. Yoon-seo checks further and sees blood. Yoon-seo is sure that the injured person is the mafia. After that, Yoon-seo approached Junhee. They talked together. Yoon-seo shows the evidence in the toilet and feels that Somi's friend is not the mafia. Junhee will also check again, but if they don't have any clues, then they have to choose Somi's friend as the culprit. They have to stop the game because Junhee doesn't want to see anyone die again. Meanwhile, Somi's friend brings food for 2 male students, but her arrival is rejected. Somi's friend is still trying to convince her that she's not a mafia, but it's useless. Then Yoon-seo's friend talks to Somi's friend. Yoon-seo's friend tells her about the splash in the toilet and is sure that it's a mafia wound. Yoon-seo's friend wants it to be a secret between them. Somi's friend proved that her body wasn't hurt at all. She's very grateful and hugs Yoon-seo's friend. Later that night, Yoon-seo's friend returns to Yoon-seo and Junhee, explaining that Somi's friend doesn't seem to be a mafia since she has no wounds. Yoon-seo comes up with an idea to trick the mafia by pretending to say that there was a hidden camera and the police secretly installed it. They'll justify charging the hidden camera. The real mafia will definitely try to destroy the camera, just like they did with the computer. Junhee tells the others. Daebyum is in a panic. Yoon-seo, her friend, and Junhee divide the task of accompanying the other students. The real mafia will definitely find a way to erase the footage. Daebyum confronts Yoon-seo and asks where the camera is. Yoon-seo says that the camera is charging in the cafeteria. Yoon Seo then leaves. Dae-byum is getting panicky. So-mi's friend also asked her to wait in the cafeteria and passed by a male student. So-mi's friend asked about the other male student. The male student also said that his friend was in the school clinic because he felt sick. So-mi's friend remembers what Yoon Seo's friend said if the person who was injured in the toilet was the mafia. So they went straight to the clinic and found the male student treating his wound. The injured male student is immediately bullied, while Dae-byum now goes to the cafeteria, immediately checks the camera. But he's confused because there's nothing on it at all. Jun-hee and Yoon Seo catch him, but the other students fuss outside, accusing the male student of being a mafia because he's injured. They approach, and Dae-byum, who was panicking, suddenly grins because it was the male student who was accused of being a mafia. Jun-hee looks at Dae-byum, who immediately changes his expression. When the other students accused the male student of being the mafia for getting hurt, Dae-byum smiled, but Jun-hee sees through it. They end up discussing again. The other students want Dae-byum and the male student to explain. Dae-byum admits that he checked the camera alone because he just wanted to make sure the battery was fully charged or not, while the male student also didn't know why he was injured. He woke up in such a state like that. Dae-byum accused the male student of being a mafia, but because he didn't accept it, the male student immediately voted for Dae-byum. Similarly, Dae-byum immediately voted out the male student. The male student is convinced that Dae-byum or So-mi's friend is the mafia, as they are often seen together. Previously, the people who died were also related to Dae-byum and So-mi's friend, and again, neon paint was on So-mi's friend's shoes. So-mi's friend obviously didn't accept it and attacked the student. After that, they voted on it. Dae-byum and So-mi's friend incite the other students to vote for the male student too. But Yoon Seo and Jun-hee are suspicious of Dae-byum because Dae-byum tries to check the camera by himself. Because if he's not a mafia, Dae-byum shouldn't have come alone. Dae-byum should have asked Yoon Seo to accompany him. Jun-hee also gets angry because only the mafia would want to find the camera. Yoon Seo and Jun-hee then vote for Dae-byum. The injured male student also wants the others to vote for Dae-byum. But Yoon Seo's friend is still suspicious about the wound on his body. The male student's friend didn't believe it, either because if he was injured, the male student should have told him. The male student admitted that he didn't want to be suspected. Dae-byum provoked the others even more. That made the male student upset and beat him up. Yoon Seo's friend then votes for the male student. Yoon Seo was even confused by her own friend. Annoyed, the male student tried to stop his friend, but the friend was attacked too. The male student confirmed that he was not a mafia, but because they slept together last night, the male student suspected that his friend might be a mafia, so he stabbed him. Because only the male student was injured. The conversation annoyed his friend. Finally, the friend voted for the male student. His own friend betrayed him and didn't trust him. The student was very sad and left crying. The voting hour was almost over. One by one, they had to go into hiding. Dae-byum still wanted to ask Jun-hee more questions, but he ignored him. Dae-byum then observed where the other students were going to hide. Meanwhile, Yoon Seo remembers something. Jun-hee remains convinced that Dae-byum is the mafia, as he smirked when a male student was suspected of being the mafia. But Yoon Seo's friend says they can't do anything now, since everyone has already voted. Jun-hee will go first and asks Yoon Seo and her friend to hide. Jun-hee thinks it'll be more dangerous if they're together, so now they have to hide separately. After Jun-hee leaves, Yoon Seo's friend, Oh Jung-won, invites her to hide. But Yoon Seo is confused why Jung-won knows that the cop is hiding on the ceiling of the toilet, when Jun-hee didn't say that the hiding location is on the roof. Jun-hee then goes to Dae-byum in the toilet and beats him up, questioning why Dae-byum become murder and mafia. But Dae-byum still claims to be a citizen. Unwilling to confess, Jun-hee intends to kill him. That way, Dae-byum would be found out as an ordinary citizen or a mafia. But Jun-hee can't do it. He couldn't kill. Dae-byum was sure that Jun-hee just wanted to live with his friends. Dae-byum felt Jun-hee didn't consider him a friend all this time. Jun-hee doesn't care about his fate. Junhee tries to hold back his emotions because DBM is the one who tried to kill everyone in order to live alone. DBM is no different from Kyungjun. DBM gets even more upset. Junhee didn't know anything about him all this time. DBM intends to end his life because of Kyungjun's bullying. Even when he was bullied, Junhee didn't show any concern. Junhee was just being nice in front of the class and had no intention of helping him. All this time, it's people like Junhee who make DBM sick. Instead of Kyungjun and his men, DBM wants Junhee to beg DBM not to kill him. But Junhee says that it's not the first time he's died. Junhee only asks that DBM not kill Yunseo or anyone else. Back to Yunseo, Jungwon is cornered. So Jungwon is the mafia. Because Jungwon knew Yunseo and Junhee's plan, she and DBM could easily organize everything, including deleting the previous CCTV footage. Jungwon had an argument with Somei, who wanted to kill Yunseo. After Junhee was killed, it was Jungwon who devised the tactic to get rid of Kyungjun and his 2 men at once first. Now Yunseo is confused as to why Jungwon killed her own classmate, but Yunseo is sure that Jungwon won't kill anyone, even the mafia. Yunseo begs Jungwon to say something, so that Yunseo can trust her. Jungwon finally confesses, and if Yunseo already knows, Yunseo should hide. The female student also goes to the cafeteria, but there's no key. The male student approaches and beats her up. At the very least, if the male student dies, the female student should die with him. Meanwhile, the male student's friend is now hiding in the infirmary. The vote was over. The male student was executed. His body was uncontrollable. The narrator mentioned that the male student was a citizen. The female student and her friend were obviously very surprised, but they realized too late. The male student now ate all the food there until he choked. The female student is also hiding. Yunseo then begs Jungwon not to kill again. Yunseo doesn't want to see anyone die. Yunseo wanted to quit this game. But when night falls, DBM intends to kill Junhee. But the narrator says that the mafia must discuss to determine the next target. DBM then goes to see Jungwon. DBM is upset that Jungwon didn't tell him about Yunseo and Junhee's plan to trap them with a camera. But Jungwon admits that his plan was impromptu and unexpected. At least Jungwon helped DBM from dying by voting for male students. If Jungwon had met DBM earlier, she would have been suspected too. Now DBM tells her that Junhee wants to be killed as long as Yunseo and Jungwon aren't killed, and whoever they kill that night, tomorrow everyone will suspect DBM. So DBM has a plan. DBM was sure that Jungwon wouldn't be able to win alone. They have to kill everyone that night, because someone died during the day before, and the culprit wasn't executed. This means they can kill more than one person. Jungwon complies, but she wants it to be her who kills Yunseo and Junhee. DBM is a bit suspicious, as if Jungwon has her own plans, especially since Jungwon hasn't killed anyone so far. DBM isn't sure if Jungwon can kill Yunseo, but Jungwon feels that it's better for her to kill Yunseo rather than DBM. With the excuse of not having much time, DBM finally complies. They then take Yunseo to the freezer. But as Jungwon lowers the temperature, DBM takes Yunseo's cell phone. DBM wants to be notified if Yunseo is dead. Jungwon will kill Yunseo by letting her freeze to death. Jungwon can't stab her because Yunseo is her friend, so let her kill Yunseo herself. DBM then leaves. DBM goes to the male student's place, and then kills him by wrapping his head until he can't breathe. Jungwon is also now on Junhee. DBM then goes to the cafeteria to find the male student dead and Somei's friend hiding. DBM then gets a message from Jungwon if Junhee is dead, so after that, DBM kills Somei's friend. Not long after, Jungwon gives news again that Yunseo is dead, but DBM realizes Yunseo's cell phone is still on. Feeling Jungwon was lying, DBM asked further questions. Jungwon asks DBM to check it himself if he doesn't believe her. DBM gets ready with his knife and goes to the freezer. Debium wants Jung-won to get rid of the body cover, but Jung-won refuses and asks Debium to do it himself. Debium shows Yoon-seo's cell phone, which is still on, meaning that Yoon-seo isn't dead. Irritated and without thinking, Debium stabs Jung-won. Debium apparently can't kill a fellow mafia, so Jung-won survived. Jung-won immediately fought back and ran away. Then she locked Debium out. Debium's attempt to rebel was in vain, and because he didn't want to die alone in the freezer, Debium was going to kill Yoon-seo too. He stabs with his knife, but the person isn't Yoon-seo. Apparently Jung-won had left Yoon-seo's cell phone behind after Debium took it and left. Jung-won switched Yoon-seo's bracelet to another body and moved Yoon-seo. Debium gets stuck in the refrigerator and gets more upset. Jung-won then approaches Yoon-seo and returns her cell phone. Meanwhile, Debium, who is cold and alone, begins to feel a horror atmosphere. A figure invites him to play basketball. Kyung-jun apparently got up and approached. Debium is getting scared, but it was just a hallucination. The next day, Yoon-seo wakes up in another place. Jun-hee is also apparently still alive. The narrator says that 2 people were killed by the mafia, and all of them were citizens. Yoon-seo then goes to Jung-won and questions why she wasn't killed too, because if all the citizens are dead, the mafia should be able to win. Yoon-seo is confused as to why Jung-won let her live. But Jung-won can't explain. She has to take care of Debium first. Jun-hee hears that and realizes that Jung-won is a mafia. Jun-hee is very upset, but Yoon-seo tries to calm him down. Jung-won left. Jung-won sees that the refrigerator door is now open. Debium isn't there anymore. Jung-won then votes for Debium and tells Yoon-seo and Jun-hee to be careful, because Debium will definitely kill them next. Jun-hee doesn't trust Jung-won anymore. Jun-hee is sure that Jung-won is up to something. Jun-hee plans for them to vote Debium out first, then kill Jung-won. Jun-hee wants to leave. Yoon-seo, who wants to go, annoys Jun-hee and forces him to rest. Left alone, Yoon-seo realizes there is a gift from Jung-won, which contains a flash drive. Yoon-seo immediately checked the flash drive. Apparently, it contains a program connected to that place, and Jung-won's figure reminds her of her birthday. Yoon-seo gives Jung-won a gift, a bracelet. Jung-won was very happy, and she briefly turned into Se-yeon. In the photo that Yoon-seo found, there's also no Jung-won's face at all. Yoon-seo realizes something and can't believe it. Someone then comes. Meanwhile, Jung-won runs into Jun-hee. Jung-won tells him that Debium is missing and asks for Jun-hee's help to find him. But Jun-hee refuses because he doesn't trust Jung-won anymore. Suddenly, Debium sends a message. He has Yoon-seo hostage and asks Jun-hee and Jung-won to go to the roof immediately. They hurry up. Debium threatens to kill Yoon-seo. And Yoon-seo finds out who killed Kyung-jun and his 2 men all along. Debium is no different from those men. Jung-won tries to negotiate because the one he really wants to kill isn't Yoon-seo, but Jung-won. But Debium can't do it. Debium orders Jung-won to jump out and die, because Debium can't kill a fellow mafia. But Jung-won is sure that Yoon-seo won't be left alive, even if Jung-won ends up dead. And unfortunately, Jung-won can't do that, because mafia can't end their own lives. Amidst the tense situation, Yoon-seo tries to escape. Jun-hee immediately attacks Debium, but Debium hits him with a rock. Debium, who wanted to kill Jung-won, stabs Yoon-seo instead. Jun-hee beats Debium up again. Eventually, Debium is stabbed by his own knife and dies. Yoon-seo is still dying in pain. Jun-hee then approaches. Yoon-seo apologizes, because now she knows that Jung-won is Se-yeon. Yoon-seo has been missing Se-yeon, and asked for the game to stop. Now Jung-won apologizes too, because she has no choice. Yoon-seo, who is dying, makes Jung-won take Yoon-seo out. Jung-won then jumps out and dies. The mafia game was over. The citizens won it. Yoon-seo then wakes up with various wires attached to her body. Yoon-seo is confused that other classmates are also there, trying to wake Jun-hee, but two people prevent Yoon Seo. Yoon Seo is getting confused. Apparently all this time she was included in the program. Yoon Seo also remembers that the two people in front of her are Se-yeon's parents. Se-yeon's mother then wants to know if death is scary and painful. Yoon Seo still doesn't understand what Se-yeon's parents are doing. They explain that all the class members are asleep, but the suffering is real. The game was made by them. Not long into the game, time went faster. While in an unconscious state, Yoon Seo and the others had actually played the game many times. Strangely, Se-yeon's parents had arranged for Jung-won to be the last one standing. But now, it was the citizen who won. Se-yeon's mom wants to know what Yoon Seo did to make Jung-won want to help. She's going to fix that, so Jung-won won't help anymore. Yoon Seo is getting annoyed. Why is she getting involved? Mom says that Yoon Seo and her other friends should accept the consequences for bullying the innocent Se-yeon and believing unfounded rumors which led to Se-yeon's death. So Dae-byum was the first to edit Se-yeon's video. Then it spread to Kyung-jun and his two men. Se-yeon then confronted So-mei and other friends who bullied her, and Dae-byum is ordered to spread Se-yeon's erotic video, because if not, Dae-byum's video will be spread. Instantly everyone in the class finds out and mocks Se-yeon. Se-yeon, who is about to leave, runs into Yoon Seo and Junhee, but Se-yeon doesn't say anything. Yoon Seo and Junhee didn't know anything. After that, Se-yeon tried to delete the video, but couldn't. Desperate to have her good name ruined, with everyone looking at her negatively, Se-yeon felt like she no longer had a place in the world. But after she died, not a single person would admit to what she had done. The students argued that it was a joke, a misunderstanding, and they didn't know anything. That's why Se-yeon's parents invented the game. The pain Se-yeon feels must also be felt by other students. All the students end up getting messages from their cell phones, so they are now in the game. The mother is upset that Yoon Seo, as Se-yeon's closest person, did not save Se-yeon. Yoon Seo was the same as the other students. The other students' memories would be erased every time a new game started. They will always be tormented because they will forever be in that game. Yoon Seo is getting choked. She wanted to be put back to sleep, but Yoon Seo begged to be released. Yoon Seo admits that she misses Se-yeon. Yoon Seo also apologized for not knowing that Se-yeon had been suffering alone. If the parents want someone to take responsibility, then Yoon Seo is ready to offer herself, because the other classmates were released, but Yoon Seo's condition is getting weaker. Se-yeon's parents keep putting Yoon Seo in-game. They finally found out how Jung-won could help Yoon Seo, because Yoon Seo's memory suddenly returned due to Se-yeon's father's birthday present. They feel like they've gone too far and want to end their revenge game. It doesn't seem to be Se-yeon's wish, but their own. But the mother doesn't accept it. She wants the game to continue. The rebellious mother, the father tries to calm her down. In short, Yoon Seo woke up on the bus. There's no Jung-won next to her anymore. She looks at Junhee and smiles. Now they're heading to the retreat center, but Yoon Seo notices something. The students in the backseat are noisy too, playing Mafia. It's exactly the same as what happened before. Yoon Seo panicked even more, and again there was Jung-won's presence, but it didn't seem to be so close to her anymore. With the back to the story of their arrival at the retreat center begin, the series ended.